welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nishay from NishaySnow.com. Welcome to part 4 of the brand series. Can you believe it? This is the end. If you're just now tuning in, I would suggest going back to episode 56, starting out with Robin Young talking about your why. Then episode 57, I talk about visual branding. Then we have episode 58 with Jess Freeman talking about building your website and a little bit of video. And then that will lead you to this episode, which kind of brings it all home, wraps everything together. And we're talking about brand messaging or verbal branding. So really excited to introduce you guys to Marva. But before we do, just a few things. First thing is this is the season finale. I'm going to take a little bit of a break for the summer. I'm not sure if it's just going to be June and July. But what I'm going to do during that time is interview new folks. And I already have like a list of people that I'm going to reach out to. So I'm very excited about the guest list. And then also what I'm going to do is, do a little rebranding of myself. So I'm going to niche down a little bit and really kind of focus on certain things. And I just read this book, Profit First, which is a great book. If you haven't read it, you should definitely check it out. And it really made me think about like what I'm doing for my business. And I needed to just like take a step back and really figure out the best way to bring profits in. And this business for me is a little bit more unique than some of my other businesses. So I think I went in broad versus niche down like I have for some other projects that I've done. And so I'm going to take that time to really figure out how I'm going to niche down and then provide my target audience, which I hope is you, the right products in order to support myself, support this podcast, support creating more content. And so I'm using that time to really give myself a little bit more clarity and then also create products that I could provide to you guys, for a cost, so I'm really, really excited about that. So please be sure to sign up for the newsletter, which you could do at nishaysnow.com, of course, /newsletter, or going over to the website. And then that way, you can keep in touch with what I'm doing because I'll make sure to send out different newsletters. And then, of course, over at social media, any social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I'm all over everything. So if you just want to keep up with what I'm doing to find out what these products might be, get a little bit of hint into my world, or to just, just say, hey, please follow me there. All right. So one additional thing. Oh, and I forgot to say YouTube. Definitely YouTube because I have some really cool ideas for YouTube, and I'm going to do a little bit of vlogging. I'm teaching myself Adobe Premiere. So go over there, and maybe you'll be laughing at me more than learning from me, but that's okay. Make sure you go over to nishaysnow.com/YouTube or just search my name in YouTube, and I'll come right up and follow along, and I'll make sure to follow you too. Okay. So now we're going to talk about this season finale of the brand series. I have created a little kind of like workbook cheat sheet of all the things that we've talked about in all 4 episodes. And in order to get that, if you're already on the newsletter list, you're going to get it this week. But if you're not, what you can do, I'm going to be kind of all cool like Robin and have you text in to get the guide, and it'll also automatically sign you up for the newsletter. So if you text 444999 and just text the word branding to that number, it will automatically sign you up for the email list, and it will also send you a PDF of the workbook. And so the number again is 444-999. So 3 4s and 3 9s. And then it'll prompt you to add your email address and your first name. And you're just like that. You don't even have to go to the website. Bada bing, bada bam, you have the PDF. So I'm curious to see, this is like a little experiment, how many people prefer that method versus going onto like a website in order to, get free guides and good stuff like that. So definitely would love to hear your thoughts on that. And if you're curious which service I decided to use, I'm using Textiful. So that's TexTiful.com. So, of course, I'll let you guys know if I end up liking it or not, probably in a future episode or in the newsletter or something like that. So again, 444-999, and text the word branding, BRANDING. All right. So let's get to Marva. Marva Goss, discovered her on Instagram, and she's also a brand strategist, but she's a brand and sales strategist. And I just really liked what she was doing over there. I liked her messaging. I liked her brand. She seemed like very knowledgeable. So I knew that I wanted her to be part of this series. And she's going to really drive home like the importance of kind of that verbal branding. And we touched on it a little bit at the end of episode 3 video, but that is a key thing. So if you're not in doing video yet, just do it. I know I'm kind of funny about video also because there's no Photoshop there. So you just get what you get. But you know what? Hey, you get what you get. You got to be comfortable with you, right? And so, but we just don't talk about video though. We just talk about just your messaging in general, how to figure out what your story is, how to share that story, how to connect with customers, the importance of like sharing your story verbally in order to really create like a connection, like that same connection that you would if you were meeting someone in person. So I'm going to just let Marva Goss really kind of school us, because I learned a lot in this episode about really that brand messaging and how to really fine tune it to really connect with the people we want to purchase from us. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. I have Marva here. Welcome, Marva.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
I am super excited too. You are ending the brand series. No pressure. I'm really excited to talk to you. I found you on Instagram and I just thought your stuff and your message was amazing. So I just can't wait to kind of dig into like more of the branding help that the creative entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast are like really yearning for, because I get like questions, I feel like every week on like different elements of branding, which is why I created this series. Yeah, but before we even begin, can you just tell the listeners a little bit about like your business?
Yes. So I'm Marva Goss. I'm a brand and sales strategist. I work specifically with coaches and creatives that need help really showcasing the impact of their service so they can book more of the right clients. I have been doing this for about almost 3 years now. And yeah, I work with women creatives and women coaches and primarily online businesses, and I love it.
Neat. And then also, like, how did you get into it? Like, what's your background?
It's a long story, and honestly, it doesn't even make sense how I ended up here. Like, looking back, I can't even see exactly how the pieces fit because I spent 10 years in the military doing logistics in the Air Force, and I transitioned out and was like, I really want to, I want to go for this business thing. I know I can do this full time. So I slowly transitioned out, and I actually started my first business as a virtual assistant. And I just quickly realized I don't like people giving me their to-do lists. I don't like I was like, no, this isn't working, okay? And so I was like, no, that's not working. And so I also have a degree in counseling. And I didn't want to go and do counseling. And I was like, I'm not in a place for that at the moment. I really think life coaching would be a great pivot because similar but not the same. And so I did my life coaching certification and that went well, but I realized that can be a lot like therapy still. And so I was doing some research. I hooked up with a coach and I was just like, look, I need something different. And when we were just kind of, figuring out what I really liked and what I really enjoyed, it came down to helping people pull out the best parts of themselves and figure out what sets them apart, makes them different, and then marketing that. Because when I was doing life coaching, a lot of people that were coming to me for life coaching were also coming to me for business help. And I was just, just nerding out over business, not making a business out of it per se, like a business coach. I was just helping them as I could as my life coach clients. And so I hooked up with this coach and she was like, yeah, this is obviously what you need to be doing. So we did like a beta program. I took a couple people and, it pretty much blew them away. And I'm all the way in. Yeah. Like within a few months of me launching the new program after the beta testers, it was booked out. So
Wow.
yeah.
Now, did you, because I think sometimes people struggle with this, did you charge for the beta program or did you like have them do it for free and then charge once you're like, okay, this works?
Yeah, I absolutely charged. It was
Okay.
something very small. I want to say like $150,
Mm.
per person. And it was, a short program, but I'm so glad I did that. The feedback from doing that is just gold because I knew exactly what to go in and tweak and take. Because after that, I immediately went into charging four figures for the program because I knew the impact of it.
Mm.
And I had tested it, and kind of like perfected it as much as I could at that point. So yeah, I definitely did charge a little something at least a
Right.
little something.
No, that makes sense. And I've heard people advise both ways, charging or not charging. But I think the majority of folks say you need to charge something, right? And even with the beta testers, they're more willing to really do the work because they put some money up versus getting it for free.
Absolutely. People show up differently when they have
Yeah.
some skin in the game, even if it's just $100 or $200, when they have some skin in the game, they're willing to show up and give input and things like that. So yeah, don't do it I don't suggest doing it for free.
Right. Well, no, very cool. So a little bit before we started the podcast, I mentioned part of the branding series. We've discussed like what your why is. We've discussed different visual elements that kind of make up a brand. And then we really kind of dug into like website and web content and touched on video a little bit. And so I know from talking to you that one of your specialties is verbal branding, which is amazing because we haven't talked about that yet in this branding series. So for people who might not understand what that is, can you kind of explain like what is verbal branding?
Absolutely. Another term that you often hear for it online is brand messaging. And so essentially, it's the way that we emotionally connect with our audience. And language is one of the ways that we do that. Your brand isn't just your logo, your color palette, and your graphics. I'm sure you and your listeners know that. But a lot of people tend to focus on those things, and that is not the way necessarily that we emotionally connect with clients. People buy off of emotion first and logic second, based off psychology. And so when you can tap into their emotions, it is much easier to get someone to know, like, and trust you and to open up their wallet and give you some of their hard earned money for your
Right.
product or your service. And so that's where I come in, is helping my clients create a message and find the words, the marketing copy, and the messaging that allows them to stand out in their crowded industry, because everybody's industry is crowded now, and really
Right.
connect to the heart of the people that they want to work with. Um, you know, it's amazing when someone reads your stuff, your copy, and they feel like they know you. They feel like they
Hmm.
know you, and they feel like you've got the solution to their problem. And that's what our audience wants to know. They want to know, who are you and can you really help me? And so by creating your messaging, which I talk about in my signature program, Master Your Message, by creating your messaging, we pretty much take all of the fluff and all of the guesswork out of it, so that when they see your message, it's very clear what you do, why you do it, who you help, and why it matters. Why do they
Mm.
need your service? Why do they need it now? Not next
Hmm.
year, not next week. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's what brand messaging is.
Mm. And so how do people get there? Like, so some of the listeners out there are like makers. And so let's say if we have somebody and they're, let's say a painter, right? And they're just like, I love to create beautiful artwork that goes on people's walls. But they're like, what should I do? Like, how do I really touch the hearts of my customers so then that they'll come and pay like $1,000 for my paintings?
Yeah. So, Um, a couple of things about that. First of all, what's the story behind how you got started with the paintings? Because a lot of times it stems in our childhood somewhere, or someone said something that just let us know, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, or someone, maybe a grandparent, gifted someone a book and on design, and that's what sparked their interest in graphic design. There's always some kind of story that landed you or helped you end up right here. And so I
Hmm.
would definitely say share your story. There's so much power in storytelling. And what will happen is people will begin to see themselves in your story. And that's part of the way that you can connect with them. Like my story, where I was telling you at the beginning how I feel like everything under the sun before I ended up with this business I have. I meet a lot of people that when I share that, they say, I'm glad you said that because I've done everything too. Or I still
Mm.
haven't found it yet. And so that's a connection point. So I would definitely say start off showcasing your story. And a lot of times we tend to think that our story isn't important and no one wants to hear it.
Mm.
That could not be farther from the truth. Right. So I have this friend who told me something so awesome one time. We were talking about this, and she said, your story is like your fingerprint.
Mm.
Everywhere you go, you leave your fingerprint. Everywhere you go, you leave a little bit of that story. And so I think that is absolutely true. And it is so important to showcase that so that you can connect with your people.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And then I think like so once people like figure that out and they have like their story, how do they then share like what are the different ways, like the most effective ways of like sharing that with your like niche market?
Yeah, and so this is where you kind of need to know your audience, because different people like to consume their content different ways, right? And so I always, when I share my story, it's usually video,
Mm.
or on a podcast like this, usually something on full voice, related, or where they can hear the inflections in my voice and hear my tone, or they can see my body language and things like that. So that's one way to do it. And of course, blogging or sending an email blast, I'd say start slow, because sometimes we're too afraid, like, or we feel like we're going to share too much. And
Mhm.
you definitely don't want to share something that's still a wound,
Mm.
for you. If it's that type of story, once it's scarred over and it's healed some and you feel comfortable, then you could share it. But if it's something that's open and that's a wound, you don't have to go there. You can
Mm.
go as far as you feel comfortable, but
Mhm.
that usually takes you figuring out, where's my comfort zone at? Like, what's my guardrail? You know? But so I say, know your audience and start slow. Know the way your audience likes to consume content. And sometimes I'll just send an email out to my list or to people that I'm connected with and be like, hey, like, how would you like to stay connected with me? And find out more about me. And, I'll give them like a little poll podcast. Would you prefer to read my blogs? Do you like my new email newsletters? Whatever it is. And then I focus on sharing myself, my story, and my content through that medium that they chose.
And I think too, what some people struggle with, and I don't know if you have any advice for this, is like, let's say if you decide to use YouTube or you decide to use a newsletter, there's so many people out there that are, say you should do it a certain way, or maybe you see like some of the top people in X industries sending out certain newsletter formats. So how can people, I guess, maybe find their voice in those different mediums? Like in a newsletter, I think sometimes people struggle with like, well, how much do I share? Do I keep it mostly business? Do I keep it personal? Like, how do I create the right connection?
Yeah. So I definitely struggled with that in the very beginning. I didn't even want to send an email because I was like, oh my gosh, like all this pressure. And what if they hate it and they unsubscribe? Like, whatever, people, they're going to unsubscribe. And that's actually
Right.
a good thing, right? But I think it takes you getting out there and doing it. Like you've got to try it and figure out what's comfortable for you. I personally, I don't like just businessy emails with just business stuff. I like a little humor in there and I like to throw gifts in. Start doing it, start where you are and just infuse your personality. Do you send a gift with every text message? Or when you're posting online, are you always using GIFs? Okay, throw a GIF in there. Are there specific words that you use in your everyday conversation? How some people, they have their own personal word bank and don't realize it. Like some people use queen or,
Right.
sis or whatever it may be. Use those things that that you use in your everyday life and that's you. And start there. If you're funny, if you like to tell stories, if you like to make people laugh, like you can do all of that in your newsletter because people, or whatever medium it is you're using, because people aren't always buying the service. Sometimes they're buying you. A lot of times they're buying you. It's because of something about you that they like that made them want the service and believe that the service is what they needed to get. So showcase who you are. You don't have to hold back. You don't have to be like anyone else. If you're not sure what words sound like you or things you use, I always tell my clients, look, round up 5 or 10 friends, family members, people who are close to you, coworkers, and just ask them, like, what are some words you always hear me use? And it's funny when they get this list back because they think it's, some of it's silly, but it works. But it works, it's really who you are. And people can tell when you're being who you are versus when you're trying to be based someone else's. And it usually doesn't go over well. So, yeah.
No, it's good advice. And then I just wanted to go into some of the things that you go over in your class. But before we do that, can you just tell people the name of your class and kind of what it's all about? And then maybe we could do some quick tips in the different areas that you cover in the class.
Yes. So the signature program is a 4-week one-on-one coaching/strategy program where I dig deep with my clients and we do, ideal client research. We go into their mission, their brand vision, their brand goals. Together, we work on crafting their brand story so they're not trying to figure out how to say their story every time they get ready to do a video or do any type of media. We work on figuring out their brand personality and their tone and the benefits of their brand. Why should people choose you over everyone else in your industry? We work on creating branded content and a visibility plan that they can use to really showcase this awesome, cohesive message that we just created over the last 4 weeks. So, in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah. So for someone who's starting out, are there any different tips that you could provide for them? Because I know even when we were talking before the podcast, you were saying some things that I wrote down that I thought was interesting, like your elevator pitch. And even just now, you were saying too, like your story that, that you get your story right that you might, say on a podcast or like if you're interviewed by a news person. So, any, tips for someone who's like, oh my God, I got to talk about this. I got to like, I got to get my story. Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, yeah, any advice?
Okay, in terms of the story, I would say sit down and map out how you got to where you are, how you came up with this business idea, how you came up with this grand plan, whether it was to leave your full-time job or to, start this side hustle, this additional revenue stream, whatever it is, map out all the things that led you here, because eventually you're going to see a thread, a connection there, something resonate with where you are now resonates with where you came from. If that makes sense. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely sit down and map that out and then highlight the things that you feel comfortable sharing. The things that you don't feel comfortable sharing right now, I would X those out, but highlight the things you feel comfortable sharing. And I always say it doesn't have to be perfect, but you perfect it as you go. And so I tell people, cut the camera on, record the video, tell people, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is who I serve, this is how I got started. Maybe you were 8 years old with your lemonade stand and that really sparked your entrepreneurial, hustle. And then you went to college and, you bombed, you flunked out of college or something. And then people love stuff like that, because they can relate to those imperfect stories. So I would say write down how you got to where you are, X out all the stuff that you're just like, look, I'm not there yet. I don't want everybody to know about my partying in college or something. But the main pieces of the puzzle that led you to where you are, I would cut on the camera and start recording. And just share. Tell your audience, hey, I realize I've never come on here and told you how I got started. Here it is, and just share with them how you ended up where you are. You'll be surprised at the feedback that you'll get once you start doing that. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea because I've seen people do something, not necessarily video, but I've seen people do that in text on Instagram. Like every once in a while, they'll put a picture of themselves and be like, oh, hey, all you new subscribers, let me just introduce you, or let me introduce myself to you. And then they'll proceed to like tell this story about them to try, I guess, to get that connection between their new followers on IG.
Yeah, the introduction post, that's always a good
Yeah.
place to do it. Yeah. Yeah. I do the same thing. When I do my introduction post, it's like, look, you're going to get these, these like fun facts about me. It's almost can be like you tell your story in like bullet points. Like I grew up in this area. Number two, I'm the oldest of, 12 kids or whatever. And number three, I went to this college. So that way you're kind of telling it like in a not formal format, but you get used to sharing.
Yeah, no, I like that because I've seen it. I'm like, oh, I need to do that, and I've never done it, but I'm like, I should do that. And then I feel like maybe that could be like the intro, and then people can kind of graduate to the video because I think sometimes people have this fear of hearing themselves or seeing themselves. I don't know why. Well, I know why, but because everybody's like kind of self-conscious or they don't like the sound of their voice, but it's just like getting comfortable with just like it's like just put it out there because you could always delete it later if you want to.
You
But
can. Yeah. And I always hear people say, well, nobody's watching, and frankly, most of everyone's views come in the replay, like
right.
across the board, like everybody. So it's okay that no one's watching right now. Eventually, if you're putting out good stuff and you're consistent, someone is going to find you and they're going to start watching. I always tell my clients, that video is up there with like live in-person events in terms of impact. And so it has a similar impact as meeting somebody in person. And that can be the difference between you selling that product or getting that client is then being able to see you
Yeah,
on
it's that
video.
connection, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think of it like that, I had a client who I was like, you need to do some videos. And she was just like, I don't want to. And I said, okay, well, that's the difference between you making money in this business and you not making any money continually. And she's just
Mm.
like, okay, well, I guess I'll cut the video on then.
Right, right.
But, you know, we have to think of it that way sometimes. Like this is just what I need to do. And I understand it's nerve wracking at first because
Mm.
I think I deleted my first couple videos within like before it even hit the 24-hour mark. I was like, this is coming down. This is
Like
coming down.
this is
But
not
the
working.
more, yes, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. Just like anything, you just got to start where you are.
No, I think that's great advice. And then I wanted to ask you too. So there is like a lot of noise out here, right? So people might say like, okay, yeah, I know my story is unique, but in, a sea of a billion different artists or whoever else, like how can I position myself as the expert or the best in X, Y, and Z? Like how do they kind of really let people know like, hey, you want me?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. One of the ways you can do that is with your content. And with that, I mean, putting the more things you put out, the more information and education you put out, you automatically look like a resource. You automatically seem like, oh my gosh, she knows a lot. She's always putting stuff out. She's always putting education out there, always putting free content out, and it's really good stuff. That's one of the ways you can do that. And that may sound simple, but not everybody is consistent with their with their
Right.
content. So, you pop up as the one person who's maybe giving a tip a week or doing one blog post a month and, sending an email blast every week with something for your audience. You're going to stand out big time
Hmm.
by doing that. And another way you can do that is listen to what's going on in other industries. It's easy to get boxed into your industry. If you are a calligrapher, it's easy to just see what's going on in calligraphy and do just that. But what if you went to a wedding event
Mm.
or, something where there's photographers? What are they doing in different industries that's not being done in your industry that you can pull over
Mm.
and use
Mm.
it?
Yeah.
That's another thing you can do. And I always, always, always say start with your content, put out really relevant, great things. And there's so many tools you can use to do that, to find out what's kind of like what's hot right now, what's everybody talking about in your industry, and then take that and put your own spin on it. Like, what's your take on it? And then the
Mm.
other thing is, I would definitely say, do some research. What's going on in other industries that's not happening in yours? And how can you use those things that they're doing in your industry and make it work for
Mm.
you?
Yeah, it's that research and then like that execution, right?
Oh, yeah, that's the big part. Execute. Don't just get stuck in the research phase.
I know people will do research and like courses and everything else, but I'm guilty of that too sometimes. But it's like, no, no, no. It's like you got to do something now. Um,
Absolutely.
And then just to like wrap up, is there any other thing that we haven't covered, any tips for somebody who is really trying to get their brand messaging or kind of like their verbal branding just right?
Yeah, so I would definitely say focus on the emotion you want your audience to feel.
Mm,
What things do you want them to feel when they encounter you? When they read something that you wrote? Do you want them to feel excited? Do you want them to feel motivated? Do you want them to sit back and kind of think a little bit, do some introspection after reading something that you've written, or reading your message? And your message is everywhere. It's in your bio on your Instagram, it's on your Facebook page, it's all over the copy of your website. That's why it's so important. um,
mm,
but definitely think about the emotion that you want to create, and then start there, work backwards. So how could you create um, almost like a brand experience
mm,
that helps invoke those emotions before they
mhm.
even work with you? what kind of content can you put out to help evoke those emotions? What kind of things can you share that will help evoke those emotions? What's your mission, your vision, and your goals for your business? How do those work together to make your client or your audience feel a specific way towards you and towards your business? I read a quote one time that said your brand is the gut feeling people have about you. And it's so true, because it's not just what they see, it is something they feel. And that's why the messaging is so important. And I would say start with, what do you want them to feel? What emotion? And a lot of people, it sounds like a very simple question, but most people don't know when I start talking to them. But this is a good example of it. I'm sure you're familiar. Dove did a rebrand.
Oh,
and yeah, and so Dove was just like falling off the map a little bit, okay. So Dove came back with a vengeance.
They did.
Yes, they did. And guess what? They don't even really talk about soap.
No,
they talk about
don't.
beauty and different body shapes and things like that. And so how all women are beautiful, we should all be accepted. They're creating an emotion. You feel accepted. You feel beautiful. You feel empowered. And so everything that they put out is centered around you feeling beautiful, you feeling empowered, and you feeling accepted, you feeling good in your own skin. So think about it. Be like Dove. Think about Dove, And another aspect of brand messaging is don't just, and Dove's another great example of this, don't just showcase what you do, showcase what you believe. What do you believe? They believe all women are beautiful, beautiful shapes, sizes, and it doesn't matter your figure, and your imperfections are perfectly imperfect. They believe in this women's empowerment and acceptance of themselves. And what do you believe? Another good example of this is Tom's Shoes, with the philanthropy aspect of their business. And they're showcasing that they believe children deserve to have a pair of shoes. And we believe that too.
Right.
That's why we buy the shoes. Even though the shoes aren't they're not that cute. But
right.
we buy the shoes because we believe what they believe. So showcase your beliefs as well. Share things that are important to you. And having strong beliefs about something, especially if it challenges the status quo and, the typical opinion of people in society, is always going to be a hit. Always going to be a hit. Because if you look at, the Victoria's Secret models and, a lot of the mainstream beauty we see, it is the opposite of what Dove showcases. Yeah. But it's a hit. It challenges that standard of beauty. But it's working. So,
and because of that, people are like, oh, when they go into the store, they're like, Dove. They don't even know why maybe they're choosing Dove, but
Absolutely.
No, very cool. Thank you for all of these tips. Like, even for me, I'm like, because I think about even my brand and I'm like, oh, I want people to feel inspired and, feel like they are creative. And so it's really like figuring out how to put that into practice, right? Like showcasing it when I'm speaking on social media. And I think that sometimes like trips people up, but I think the Dove and the Tom's examples really kind of help drive that home.
Absolutely. You are so welcome. I'm glad to help.
Yeah, but please tell the listeners where they can find you.
Yes. So I'm in the middle of a rebrand. My new website is www.marvagoss.com. That's MarvaGoss.com. And also, I'm always on the gram, which is marvajcoachingco.com. I'm trying to change that handle soon when my rebrand is done. And you can also find me on Facebook, same handle, Marva J Coaching Co.
Perfect. Thanks again. This is going to be a huge, huge help. Everybody go to Instagram, hit her up, let her know what you think about the episode. And thanks for coming on.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. It is the end of the branding series, which I hope you found to be very helpful. Please let me know. And it is our season finale as I take a short break. I'm really excited about some of the guests that I have lined up. I think you guys will be inspired by them if I can get them all to say yes. Usually I have like an 80% close rate. So I'm hoping that I get the majority of the people that are on my short list. But thank you for all of your support. I really, really appreciate it. Please, let us know what you think about this episode in the show notes or on social media. And remember, for that free branding workbook, text the word branding to 444999. That's branding, BRANDING, to 444999. All right. Um, yeah, so thanks for tuning in. And also, if you could do me a solid, if you could head on over to iTunes and just rate me 5 stars, that'll really help the podcast. And also, can you share the podcast with just one other person? So even though maybe I'll be gone a month and a half, 2 months, we'll see how long it takes me to do everything. At least, people who haven't heard the podcast before can go back and listen to previous episodes, and that just kind of keeps it active and lets iTunes know that it's still relevant. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. Anywho, remember to catch me over at YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the things. And for the show notes for this page, of course, like always, you just put the episode number at the end of NashaySnow.com. So for this one, it would be NashaySnow.com/59. All right, you guys. Have an amazing beginning of the summer, and I'll catch you somewhere in the middle. Make sure to stay creative and do something fun. Talk soon. Bye.